Are you a lactator? Are you a lactator? I don't care about my fans, I care about my lactators.
I wasn't gonna make a video about this. I really wasn't. But it seems every day over the past couple of years, I've seen instances of all of this LGBT shit being pushed on young children. And I can't not say anything. And this just goes to show we are becoming so open-minded that our brains are falling out. I've always said, a mind is like a wound. If it's too open, you get an infection. I don't think that there is a subject politically that makes me as angry as this one does. And normally in my videos I'll talk a whole lot before I get to the point, but I'll just tell you guys up front why this bothers me so much. Years ago there used to be this very ugly stereotype that gay men are pedophiles who are just looking to prey on children. And it took decades to undo that stigma. And years ago there used to be all of these ugly talking points about the gay agenda looking to recruit children. But it wasn't really true. Today, the mainstream LGBT community, they're making it true. They are giving validity to all of these archaic, antiquated talking points from the past. And it's a terrible, terrible thing that's happening. So let's start with the one that's been in the news lately. Recently, there's been a lot of fanfare about Desmond, a 10-year-old drag queen. Now, little Desmond came out of the closet when he was... Is this a joke? Are you fucking with... You're fucking with me.
I came out of the closet when I was only 3.
Oh. When he was 3.
Stop the madness!
What capacity do 3-year-olds have to have a sexuality? Your body hasn't developed, you have no hormones. I mean, I didn't know I was gay when I was 3. I didn't know what gay was! 3-year-old boys can't spell their own name, but they can know that they are sexually attracted to men? I mean, to give you an idea of how young that is, kids do not start kindergarten until they're 5. That's why nobody will ever convince me that this is not being pushed on them by the parents. So, as most of you know, a few weeks ago, Desmond performed at a nightclub in Brooklyn in the middle of the night where grown men were shoving dollar bills at him. 10-year-olds don't belong in nightclubs. What is wrong with you? But that's not even the worst part. On his Instagram, Desmond refers to himself as the world's youngest club kid. Let's look up the Wikipedia of the club kids, shall we? Writer Michael Musto wrote about the club kids' cult of crazy fashion and petulance. They are terminally superficial, have dubious aesthetic values, and are master manipulators, exploiters, and partiers. Just what every parent would want their child to be. What parent allows their 10-year-old to be a club kid? I mean, when you're 10, the only club you should be concerned about is the babysitter's club. God, I am so thankful to have the parents that I had because they're so accepting, but not too much. Now, here is a video of him hanging out with Michael Alec, who was recently released from prison where he served 17 years for murdering his drug dealer, chopping him into pieces, and dumping him into the Hudson. Just a 10-year-old hanging out with a convicted murderer, no big deal. Just like be open-minded. And if you look at the sign above them, it says Rohypnol, which is the date rape drug. I mean, what kind of things are being glorified to these kids? Drugs and promiscuity and drinking and clubbing? And this is my problem with the modern LGBT community. This is what the gay culture stands for. It is dark and it is unhealthy. They fetishize dysfunction. They glamorize anything that is unhealthy, anything that is self-destructive. And another thing to note is that according to his mother, Desmond has autism. So not only are you exploiting your young child, parading them around in drag, I mean, does he ever go to school? But it's a child who has autism. And here's another video of him hanging out with a middle-aged drag queen where he is imitating snorting ketamine.
A world where drag kids actually exist.
And people do ketamine on a couch.
I am a grown adult, and I did not know that that's how that drug is ingested. If I didn't know that, why should he? Why should a 10-year-old? Like, he's clearly been around it enough. And the horrifying thing is that this is being glorified by the entire media. They have paraded this kid on the Today Show and Good Morning America and NBC saying, oh, it's so brave and trailblazing and how wonderful.
I love that you love root beer, caffeine-free. I can get on board with that.
My mom doesn't like me drinking caffeine.
Does it make you hype?
Oh yeah, my mom won't let me have caffeine. She'll just let me strip in nightclubs and hang out with drug-addicted convicted murderers, but a Coca-Cola, that's where we draw the line. Let's not get crazy. This is crazy. It's nuts. And everybody knows that it's nuts. But they don't want to admit that because they're afraid that, like, someone who works at BuzzFeed will call them a Nazi or something. But if this seems bad to you, I assure you, to borrow a phrase, it gets better. So let's talk about 3-year-olds having sex changes. Now, before I get into this, I want to be very clear about something. I vehemently disagree with modern gender ideology, but regardless, I 100% support transgender people having all of the rights and respect and dignity in the world. You know, some people disagree with that, but I am unwavering in the fact that I don't support this shit, but I do support trans people who are consenting adults. The past few years, we've seen children who are as young as 3 years old transitioning and having sex changes and being injected with hormones and puberty blockers. We do not know the long-term effects of these drugs, and because leftist ideology has infected science and medicine, it can barely even be studied. There was a very prominent researcher in Canada named Kenneth Zucker who was at the top of his field, one of the most highly respected doctors in this subject, who was fired just for trying to study the negative long-term effects of children transitioning, just because he asked questions. This really cannot even be studied. Brown University came out with a study showing that kids whose friends have transitioned genders are much more likely to do it themselves, you know, basically showing that it's kind of a trend and a fad, and there's an element of peer pressure and social coercion. They had to censor it, take it down, apologize, because this cannot be questioned. It cannot even be studied. This is a 14-year-old boy who, when he was a child, was told that he's transgender and put on all of these hormones. And now that he's a little bit older and realizes he's nothing of the sort, he grew breasts, so he has to have a double mastectomy. How is this not a violation of the Hippocratic Oath? Do no harm. Ideology has clearly infected medicine. You mean to tell me that there is no harm in a 14-year-old boy needing a double mastectomy for nothing? You know, I'd imagine that being a child who is transgender is very painful, but I cannot imagine the pain of a 14-year-old boy or a child who had all of this shit pushed on them and was chemically castrated. All of this for nothing. You know, when I was 16, I used a fake ID to get a Green Day tattoo. If that doesn't tell you how much minors are capable of making lifelong decisions about their body, I don't know what does. Then you have a whole other trend. Genderless babies. Babies. Parents who refuse to tell their child what their biological gender is. This is child abuse. I'm sorry, this is child abuse. I think the reason that I have such a visceral reaction to this is, you know, being gay or being transgender, it's not a choice. Believe me, if it were, I would not be dating guys because they're horrible. It's not a choice. And the thing is, these things, it is a choice. It is a choice that these yuppie parents are making for their infants or toddlers. Right now there's a case where the parents are getting a divorce and the mother is trying to force the young boy into being transgender, and the father and all of the family and everyone around them says that he's not, that he's nothing of the sort. But she's trying to get a court order to enforce all of these medications and hormones and stuff on him. If I got into every instance of this video would be 2 hours long. That is how common this is becoming. One excuse I've often heard for this is that, oh, well, you need a doctor to sign off on it. But the thing is, in this environment, what doctor is going to say, no, the kid isn't transgender. No, you can't have your hormones. You can't transition. They know that they would be written up for hate speech. They could be in the news. They could lose their job. Everyone is afraid to question this. And now, I'm not saying that there aren't instances where this could be appropriate, where there are kids who really are transgender. What I'm saying is that this is being taken way too lightly, that is being done way too frequently, and while there are valid cases and people, there are also many ones where it is clearly a trend and a very just dangerous fad. Of all of my friends who have kids who are young, who are in like kindergarten or second grade, every single one of them tells me that there's at least one kid in the class who's having a sex change or who's gay or... It's nuts. It just seems everywhere that this is being pushed on these kids by their parents, by their schools, by every institution. And, you know, being gay is not easy. It's not something that any of us would choose for ourselves. And I can only imagine that being transgender is 1,000 times harder. This is not something you should actively want for somebody. And it has just gone so far beyond tolerance to being gay is cool, being trans is great, like it's something that you should actively want. There was a teacher in Chicago who's responsible for training other teachers, kindergarten and up, who said that he views it as their job to turn kids queer. And this same teacher in the past has advocated for young kids in schools being taught how to have unprotected gay sex. In the UK, there was one school where 76 of the kids are transgender. And here is an entire family who has transitioned genders. Mother, father, 11-year-old, 13-year-old. I mean, does anybody think that that is real? Does anybody think that that is valid? And, you know, as I said, I do believe that being transgender is a very real thing. But it's also a very rare thing. And what are the odds that an entire family all happens to be, and at one school, 76 kids just so happen to be? I mean, there is clearly such an element of coercion and peer pressure at play here that I find really disturbing. There was an elementary school where 6-year-olds were required to write gay love letters to one another.
Are you out of your mind?
Yes.
Are you crazy?
Yes.
This is nuts. We all know it's nuts. My God. And I swear to God, all of the acceptance and all of the gay rights and all of the progress that has been made on that front in the last decade is about to vanish. It is all going to go away. Because if I am so repulsed by all of these things, how do you think the average person feels? And the average person is not seeing the distinction between these things and the Alphabet Soup Club and average everyday LGBT people like us. We need to stop letting them speak for us. I can't get over that one kid saying he came out of the closet when he was 3. Came out of the closet? You came out of the womb. The thing is, if these people believe that 3-year-olds can have a sexuality, why can't they be having sex? Why wouldn't they think that? I guarantee you, mark my words, that will be next. The day is coming. And I assure you that when that day comes and they are advocating that children can be having sexual relationships, I assure you that any opposition to that will be called hate speech and you will be a bigot. If we're being honest, I genuinely feel like 90% of the population at least has to agree with me on this. But the thing is, the people who are pushing that control every microphone. They control every institution and every platform. So please, if you are a liberal, if you are a member of the LGBT community, it's on us. We need to speak out about this because it just keeps going further and further and further. And I know that this is only the ground floor and it's just going to keep going further and it's going to get more extreme and I can't imagine what the next thing will be. And here is a half-naked 5-year-old dancing very sexually at gay pride. I mean, oh my God, I mean, it is sexualizing children, it is. They can play coy and say it's not, it is. What would the reaction be if this were a little girl, half-naked, bending over with grown men gawking at her? Their heads would explode. So what? Is it that boys are disposable? Or is it that once we slap that label of LGBT on something, we immediately need to accept it? Well, I won't. I will not. Absolutely not. Not happening. I will not accept 14-year-old boys needing double mastectomies. I will not accept toddlers being chemically castrated. I will not accept the idea that 3-year-olds can have a sexuality and can be gay and can be injected with hormones. I will not. And if these people want to say that that makes me a monster and it's hate speech and I'm a bigot and I'm a terrible person, go for it. I don't care. Anyway, you know, I don't really have anything funny or witty to say because I genuinely find this shit disturbing. Anyway, thank you guys for watching. Subscribe to my channel. My name is Mikey, and I identify as a pussy willow tree.